Hello, welcome to today's HR Huddle. I'm Tamera Loerzel, and with me is Jennifer Wilson. We are glad to be with you today. And we thought we would spend some time this afternoon to talk about some hand wringing that we're experiencing ourselves and our colleagues are experiencing, some clients. There's just worry and uncertainty happening in the profession, with changes in the profession, in the economy, in our political environment, in our regulatory environment, and what changes should we be expecting, and how do we advise our clients, and just every day waking up to change. And the volume just continues to increase, and people are at different places with it. But one thing that, Jen, I think you and I have noticed, that people are wringing their hands, they're fretting about it, they're worrying about it. Overwhelm and stress is high, and maybe a little bit of sense of hopelessness. Like, what can I do? How can I, what do I have control over? And so we thought that we should, first stop and acknowledge it. And we can talk more about that. And then talk about maybe some practical strategies to get into action, because that's what there is to do. And fretting and worrying and feeling hopeless and, lack of control, like I can't do anything about it. First of all, it's false. Second, it's not helpful. It just really, perpetuates the cycle of that stress and that overwhelm. And so we wanted to first stop and just acknowledge that, we're hearing a lot about it over the last few weeks, since the beginning of the year, for sure. But, it's coming into that, at the end of the year. And we just think that we need to stop and say, how are your people doing? How are you doing? And that you might be experiencing some of this. And we probably need to acknowledge that and talk about it. And so I think that's the first place to start. Jen, do you agree?
Yeah, I do, Tamara. And I was just thinking, like, I was gonna say that I think the marketplace, the world, the US, the world, more dynamic change is happening now than I can remember. But I think I have to say, well, kinda, the pandemic felt a little like this at the beginning, in the first 4 or 5 months, and a little chaotic and a little like, minute by minute, how do you feel? And the reason we're talking about this on HR Huddle is because our people are feeling like it. And if you don't know that they're feeling like it, we're just here to tell you they are, because we talk to them. We have them in our classes for continuing ed leadership, and we have coaching conversations with them, and we're encountering them. They're reaching out to us to say, hey, you got a minute? I know I'm not in your program anymore, but I need some advice. So we're feeling it a lot from the people that we know in the market, our colleagues in the profession. We also feel it from our own people, and we feel it from each other. And we just thought, man, we got to acknowledge this. So that's number one. The number one strategy for our HR professionals is it's okay to acknowledge that we're in this time of extraordinary dynamic change and a lot of uncertainty. And we don't really know what the end result of any of it is. It's sort of in process. And so that feels unsettling. And it comes with some anxiousness, and that is normal. And that we just want to acknowledge that and say, hey, you're not alone feeling this way. And that's the very first thing that people need to understand, is that they're not alone. That makes them, feel a little better, just to know other people have concerns. And we may not share the exact same concerns or the same vantage point on those issues. But just acknowledging, man, I'm overwhelmed by all this that's happening. Like, I'm having a hard time keeping up with all this news and change and things that are happening. So just the first thing is acknowledge. And the second is, Tamara was kind of pointing to this powerlessness that many of us feel. Like, for instance, well, let's just take some of the dynamic change in the profession with shifts in ownership and mergers and acquisitions. It's like every single Monday morning, there's another announcement made that somebody else has either been acquired by another firm, or they've merged with another firm, or they've been acquired by a PE-backed firm, or they have taken on PE money, and so that has a lot of organizations and the individuals within them thinking, is this going to happen to us? What does it mean to me? How will this affect my career? those that are part of the organizations that are making the announcement are wondering, what does this mean to me? And so that uncertainty in our employment arena isn't necessarily what we needed from a talent perspective right now, trying to attract people to our profession and retain them. But it's there. And so, what could I do if I was inside an organization that had that kind of change? And I really wondered, what does it mean to me? Well, I probably have to go to a supervisor or manager and ask. Certainly, I would want to read whatever the organization, the firm, the company, whatever their announcements have been. If they have a frequently asked questions document, I'm going to go read that. I'm going to get smarter about what has already been published or decided or communicated. And then I'm going to make a list of questions or thoughts that I might have, both the query part, where maybe someone else can tell me what it means to me or what they think or how they suggest I react. And then there might be some feelings that I'm having that I need to say that aren't about me asking my supervisor, what should I do? Me saying, here's how I feel. Here's what I want to see happen, or here's what I'm concerned will happen and that I'm not really up for. So an expression of my opinions. Both of those things could, all three of those things, get more informed, go ask my questions, go express my feelings or my thoughts, my wants and needs. All three of those things could make me feel less powerless. What do you think, Tamera?
I think that's great. And I love those three categories. And I think one of the things as HR professionals or leaders listening to this conversation is that we need to talk to other leaders in our organizations about being open to these conversations. Because I think sometimes we want to shut it down and pretend it's not there and that it'll all be okay. But then it's festering over there. And we're not engaging in an open dialogue and an open, transparent dialogue. And we might not have all the answers, which is one of the reasons we don't want to engage in the conversation. Or we might not feel like we want to hear what their concerns are. And so we can intentionally or inadvertently shut those conversations down. And that's why we wanted to raise it to say it's happening out there. And so we need to say, how do we engage, in a constructive, proactive, what can we do so people feel heard, they can express those three areas that Jen just said, and then we can figure out what next actions, there are to take. And sometimes I think it can feel, Jen, like that could be a waste of time. Like, let's get to work. We have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of things to do. But if we want our people to be engaged and productive and, positive and difference making and produce results, we can't just let that fester over there. And I think that's sometimes what we do, when that happens. And like, I'm thinking about like the regulatory, changes, with the new administration, we can't predict, we can anticipate, but how are we going to be able to handle that and react to that? What's that going to do over the next 3 or 4 months as we're meeting with clients? So there could be some fretting over that, both from how does it affect me personally in my time and my planning and my workload, but how does it also affect me in providing quality advice and direction for my clients and answers to my clients, so we have some confidence. And so then we back up and say, all right, what can we do? Who owns watching and, looking for the different changes that are coming, who owns communicating those, how do we create some communications to our clients about what we're doing, so they know we're on top of it. And again, sometimes I think, well, we'll wait to tell clients in this example until we have all the answers, and we can't wait for that. I think that's one of the themes I'm hearing, Jen, in this conversation is like, we might want to wait and instead let's communicate what we do know, what we are doing, and what they can expect us to do in the future. Like, that is a way to get some control and some sense of, action and clarification of who owns it. So I think that would be important.
Right. And I think, Tamera, anytime you have this kind of velocity of change, it doesn't, like, some people may hear this conversation and think that we're coming from just politics, and we're not, but the politics of what's happening now is affecting business, and it is raising questions with people regardless of how they voted. And those people are employees and they're family members of people affected by things that are happening right now, and they're starting to show up at work, and we're experiencing it. And so I'll give an example, a couple of them. One is, last week's, funding of nonprofit organizations, the government funding piece of it, the granting, and all of the different communications there, and organizations, CPA firms that specialize in not-for-profit audit or not-for-profit clients on the client accounting side, and the clients that are affected, at least potentially, or they appear to be affected. We're not totally sure what's happening there. So then staff are like, what does this mean? Is that my clients are all nonprofit? What's going to happen to me? Well, we don't have exact answers right now. We don't know. That appears to be being ironed out for the specificity and the clarity of getting educated. We can't get educated fully until that all settles down. But as it does, then what does that mean to the entities, and how are we going to support them? And as Tamera said, we can't wait till we know. Mm-hmm. We should not be silent. We should acknowledge it because it's an uncertainty, but just recognizing it, saying, hey, it is uncertain, and we're going to have to stay together and watch it as it unfolds and communicate with one another. Let's stay in close touch. Let's keep a close cadence of communication with clients. Biggest clients we have that are affected, let's make sure that we're on the phone with them right away and just expressing support and saying, how can we help you? And let us know what you learn, and we'll let you know what we learn. And just express partnership and commitment, not necessarily thinking you have to show up with all the answers. Right. And it doesn't matter where anybody is on voting. This is just business. This is like, our target client group is affected. What do we do? And we don't exactly know yet. So that's one example that I would give. And, another example, I live in Bellevue, Nebraska, and it's just south of the city of Omaha. And our claim to fame is off at All Force Base. And we have all the branches of the military here. And a lot of people got letters, and the letter said, quit your jobs, and you can quit working and get paid through September, I think it is. And, so people I run with, their family members have been affected. It's affecting people. It's affecting my kids' friends, or whatever, however it is, people at our restaurants that we go to and run into and see and talk to, they're all talking about it. So it could create this fear and uncertainty within, the community, right? And make everybody think, what will happen? And it's not all just targeting our base. That's not the point. We have a lot of government contractors there. It's not about just our base. Everybody that got the letter is affected, and it's way more than just my little town, so that's not the point. The point is it escalates this uncertainty and this conversation that isn't necessarily happening at work, but it affects our people. And they're walking around like with the weight of it, or whatever, the fear. So allowing that further education and study, updating people, like I'm sure some employers who rely heavily on the base here have been communicating to their staff, I hope, saying, hey, here's what we know so far. Let's all, stick together and keep watching for further announcements. The next one will be whatever, and just communicate, acknowledge, communicate, allow your people to get as educated as possible. Let it be an open door to express and to ask questions. That's what's so critical about this right now. And that will give your people the sense that you care about them as whole people. Right. Because we've been saying that as HR professionals for a long time. Bring your whole self to work. If your whole self is biting, scared, anxious, hand wringing, as Tamera said, if that's what's happening, let's discuss it and see what we can do to clear you so that we can continue on productively with what we do know, which is we have a lot of work to do right now on this particular area, or this is something we could do to get in action. So I think that's crucial. just that openness. And I hope those examples are helpful for folks, because it's not just related to those things, this uncertainty.
There's a long list that we don't have time to, and I think that's one of the things, is to be open to what that potential list is, for the different people. And, Jen, I think you pointed out well that it's not just it's not just the people, it's the people they care about, the people they work with, like you said, your children's friends,
Yes.
parents, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's
Yep.
just so much of that. And
Yeah.
the other thing I think that you said is crucial is get information. If we can get resources and information and share that immediately, figure out, who needs to know, how do we bring people along? That's a change, communication, change management strategy. I think that's critical, is to get information and acknowledge it when we have it, and talk about what we're going to do with it, include people in those conversations. And I think that will make a huge difference also. The other thing is, if there is, we've been talking about the nail biting and the stress, what kind of resources do you have, within your benefits package or your healthcare provider, or, how can we provide some resources for people so that they have somebody to talk to, so that they can, have access to, whether it's, counseling services, or even just, meditation, programs, or things to stay calm, manage the stress, manage their own fretting, so that they can then be in communication, figure out what action to take. But we have we know many organizations have lots of resources available for that, and this is a good time to remind people of it, and just share, how they can get access to it and what it can provide. So I think that can also be helpful.
Yes. And one of the things I'm a little bit worried about is, I was just thinking about, like I mentioned, like, get educated and then allow for inquiry. If I'm the person affected, I want to go ask questions of somebody. What I want to be careful of is that while we want to ask peers questions, and if I'm an HR professional, I'm definitely asking my peers questions, and I'm asking people like Jen and Tamera here on this discussion, like, what do you know, and what have you heard, and what resources are you using? But for staff, we want to say it's okay to share with your peers, but let's be careful that we're not keeping it underground, and let's be careful that we're not like ratcheting up the agitation and stress at a certain level without letting it bubble up and get other people involved. There's a concept called triangulation, which is I complain to Tamera. She and I complain back and forth like crazy, but we're not actually talking to the person that could affect change. And that could be a bad move. That only hurts Tamera and Jen while we're complaining to one another or worrying together, fretting. So we have to watch that, that we're not dragging each other down with too much expression of this angst without further information. Once we've determined this is all we know so far, let's stay close in touch. We got to be careful we don't keep wallowing in it. My mother called that the game of ain't it awful. And she would say, we'd be complaining about something, change at a school policy or whatever. And she'd say, I'm going to give you 2 more minutes to play the game of ain't it awful. And then we're going to transition to another subject, or we're going to talk about what actions you're going to take to shift your circumstances. Because just sitting there running, ain't it awful, doesn't work.
Right. That's exactly where I was going to go, Jen. It's all about then what actions can we get centered around that we can take. And a big part of it is the inquiry and communication, but there might be other actions to go have conversations with people, or to go do some research, or go talk to clients, learn what they're learning, talk to others in the community. What kind of resources are there, available? But if we can get out of the ain't it awful conversation, which is not productive, and just builds up more, then we can say, all right, what actions are there to take? So,
Yeah.
But we thought this was important to acknowledge. It's not an easy topic, and there's not a crystal clear path, but there are actions to take if we can lift ourselves up from what are the worries, what are the concerns, but we have to first be willing to acknowledge they're there, they exist. So we need to get them expressed, and then we can start to say, okay, what can we do, and what can we communicate, and how can we move through this together, and how can we support each other, not make people wrong, by the way, for their fears or for their fretting or for their feelings about things. We have to hear them, and then we can say, all right, now what do we do, so that people can feel like they can express it. Otherwise it is going to be the underground complaining if we keep pushing it down, and that it will only explode. So that's not productive.
No, and it takes us off track.
Yes.
It messes us up from producing things that make us feel satisfied and happy in other areas of our life where we might have more impact. We can get sidetracked pretty good with that, Tamera, that uncertainty, the complaining. You said, let your people know what resources. I'm just going to say to everybody listening, I ran this morning. I'm going to run on Wednesday. I'm exercising every single day. That's one of the ways I manage to get myself centered, to be able to have good constructive conversations about solutions and what's next. So there's lots of strategies like that. And we've done other HR huddles on stress management and wellness strategies. That's not necessarily what this is, but I do want
it helps.
I was going to say, I do recommend that if you are spending time right now running fretful dialogue, or people around you are, and they look really caught in it, one of the best ways to get unhooked is exhaust your inner scaredy cat, your inner worrywart, your inner worst case scenario builder. Exhaust it with exercise. If you are doctor cleared, get out there and do that. It'll help immensely, and it'll help you have all kinds of possibility and hope. And inside every breakdown, there's always a breakthrough. And so that's one of the things, have faith that these uncertainties that you're feeling, will iron out and become revealed to you. And even if they don't turn out exactly like you wanted, hopefully, often they turn out to be better than what you were hoping would happen. So that's what we want to get in action. Don't get me wrong. We're not just going to Scarlett O'Hara the thing and think about it tomorrow and hope. But we do want to recognize that if we, calm down, communicate, educate, talk to peers, and then stay close to others, we'll probably have a really solid breakthrough as more is known.
Yes. Love that. And we'd love to hear what strategies you have, or if you have follow-up questions on this conversation, reach out to us. Otherwise, we hope you have a great week, and we look forward to seeing you next Monday on the next HR Huddle. Thanks for joining us today.